What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, a console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about our favorite hobby, video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 50. 50 episodes in. I think we're 2 weeks away from our 1 year anniversary of launching this podcast, which in retrospective is kind of weird to think about that for every week for the last year, essentially, I have sat down to record this podcast. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool to think about and reflect on. But happy to have you here. Thank you all for your love, kindness, and support. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And for sure are stoked because this has been a crazy week, I feel like. Not only for me, it's kind of been in my personal life, super busy with, stuff around the house and had a couple work stuff I had to take care of and go to, stuff after work and all that. And just really feel like I haven't had much time to just relax and chill. And candidly, I also feel like I really haven't had too much time to play, at least during the week. Over the weekend I had a little bit of time, but during the week I just feel like I haven't had like a consistent game session. Like when I have been able to sit down and game, I feel like it's only been for kind of just 30-minute chunks, like here and there. However, actually, just before I hopped on to record the podcast, I did play about 2 hours of Death Stranding, and we'll get to that. But I needed that just before, I needed to just decompress that way. I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the reasons why I love video games is just to decompress and kind of escape into a world and just relax. It's also kind of one of the reasons why I have shied away from multiplayer games because while like during my Call of Duty heydays, it's fun and I'd hop on with some friends and all that, but it got stressful. And there were times where I could tell like I'd get done for the night, even to be late. We'd play till like, I don't know, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning or whatever. And I'd hop off and I'm just so like in adrenaline going, like I'm so awake. It was hard to fall asleep at that point just because you've just been playing this game and it's so intense. And yeah, so that's kind of away from that. I don't know about you guys, but that's just kind of where I'm coming from. But we got some exciting things to talk about this week, and I'm excited to dive into it. But there are a couple things I wanted to touch on at the top, and as I enjoy this week, I am enjoying more Costco Sangria. I figured since I'm recording, actually, it's pretty late on a Thursday evening, and I figured, you know what, this will be my nightcap. And then after we're done, we can kind of just wrap up, go lay in bed, and get ready to start the weekend. So, a couple things I wanted to knock out at the top and just touch on. First and foremost, I started a Discord server for the podcast. And so if you have followed me on social media, so either on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast, or you like the Facebook page, which is Gamecite Chronicles, I've posted a link there where you can join the Discord. And candidly, I've had a Discord for a while, like years, and I've used it a couple of times way back in the day for like chatting while we're playing a game, but I have not used it for years, and I'm still very, very new to the platform, so still getting up to speed on it. But I'd love to see your faces over there where we can chat, hang out, do all that stuff, uh, and maybe eventually use it as a forum for inquiries on the podcast and stuff like that. I think that'd be really cool. So check it out there. I'll also drop a link where you can join the Discord server in this episode of the podcast in the description. So you can do it that way as well. I would love it. The other thing is The Last of Us episode 2. By the time this goes up, episode 3 will be out. But I wanted to touch on episode 2. I'm not going to give like a full review or any spoilers or anything, but great episode. This show kicks ass, and I like it a lot, I have to say. There were a couple things in episode 2 where I was like, I don't know about that. But the big big moment in episode 2 was pretty on point and very, very well done, I think. So I'm excited. I've seen episode 3. I think we're finally going to. I keep calling him Ron Swanson. I forget the guy's character in the game, but the guy that plays Ron Swanson in Parks and Recs. We're finally going to meet him and his character, and I think we're going to get some backstory as well. And I'm curious how they're going to do that scene. If I remember it, that's when they're in the kind of the isolated city, but then there's a part where you're like battling to go through all of that to get to this like safe house and hiding behind cars, and there's like snipers and people trying to take you out. So I'm curious if they're going to do anything with that in the show, because that was pretty epic. But nonetheless, The Last of Us, man, they got a hit on their hands. And I saw, I think it was on social media that Bella Ramsey was quoted saying that she's said a sequel to this HBO season 1, so season 2, which would likely cover Last of Us Part 2, is likely given the success, and it's kind of in HBO's hands, I think is what she said. But she said it's pretty likely, and I get the sense there's also, I think, some speculation that Abby from The Last of Us Part 2 has been cast, and so I'm curious. I'm curious on how they would do Part 2, because if you've played the game, it's a long game. There's so many different facets to it, and I feel like they could do 2 seasons for just that game alone. Potentially more depending on how much you wanted to build off on it and showcase. So I'm curious how they're going to do it, and if they did cast Abby, will we see her at the end of season 1? And if you've played the game, either of them, kind of maybe know what I'm talking about. So either way, I have something to look forward to every Sunday night. Me and my wife sit down for The Last of Us. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I would highly recommend you check it out if you are so inclined. But I would definitely recommend it. Definitely one of the better, if not best, video game adaptation, especially in terms of authenticity, like keeping true to the story and just adding it and not changing it for the sake of changing it. I think that's pretty important. Another thing I wanted to touch on is Forspoken. So Forspoken has launched on the PlayStation 5, and boy, this game has had mixed reception. Like it's all over the place, man. Like I was looking on Metacritic. Metacritic has it based on 72 critic reviews. It's sitting at a 67, so not that great. And then a user score of 3.6, even worse. I did see that I think some folks are review bombing it. There's someone, I think I saw a couple screenshots of like review bombing it, but it is what it is. Either way, that's a little lower than I would have kind of anticipated. I would have expected maybe like 70, 71, and then maybe sitting at anywhere from a 6 to a 7 on the user score. But it's so interesting when you look at what some people are saying. Like some people are saying that this game is just not good. There's definitely been some conversation around the dialogue, and however, I did see that there's a slider for the dialogue between the Cufflink and Freya, the main character, so we can kind of turn it down a little bit, and I love it. I love that. Like, give us more options like that. The customization options, that is fantastic. So that's cool. But it still has, during some cutscenes, that very Marvel-esque, generic, dialogue that I think is just very overused and we're kind of all sick and tired of. It's just terrible. So I don't think you can avoid it entirely. But on the other hand, I see a lot of folks that are saying like, this game's fun. I'm having a great time with it. Like the combat's really fluid. It's really fun. Getting spells, the parkour, traversing is a lot of fun. And there's a lot to like here, despite, some of the standard criticisms that we're seeing across the board. So it's really intriguing to me, and quite candidly, it makes me really, really want to go out and pick it up because I'm just curious. Like I want to see for myself. Now, as I mentioned before on the podcast, I did play the demo when that launched, and I walked away from the demo not as hyped going as I was going into it, but I don't think that game did it just or the demo did it justice. Because I think that you have to be eased into those systems, eased into the combat kind of as you play through the game, and then kind of understand the systems and the structure and a little bit of the story and the world that you're in. Because the demo just kind of thrusts you in, hits you with a little bit of tutorial, but you just go and you do a couple quests in the demo. So it just didn't do it justice. And I've seen actually, I think I heard Gene Park, who is a games journalist, I think at the Washington Post, or at least he was, because I think they shut down that division. Either way, I saw him mention that he was having a great time, that the combat's great, and the systems in it really do shine kind of once you're eased into it. So kind of reinforced what I was thinking about when I walked away from the demo. But the problem with this game is the timing. Like it's just there's so many games that are starting to come out that it's like this is going to be one of those years where just concessions are going to have to be made. Like I'm sure a lot of you out there feel the same way I do, but like I can't get to every single game, so I got to pick and choose. And certainly budget's part of that. I can't go buy every single game that I want. Unfortunately, I'm not in that luxurious of a position. So maybe it's a game I can get to at some point down the road, but right now it's tough to pull the trigger because I know Hogwarts Legacy's 2 weeks away. We've got Atomic Heart after that, which I really, really want to jump into as soon as possible when that releases. And then, Resident Evil 4 is coming out sometime in March. And so it's just like, and there's other games too that I'm not even thinking of, and maybe games I don't even know about that they could drop out soon. And I've been hyped about Dead Space, which launches tomorrow at the time of this recording. And I've told myself I was going to hold off on it, just because I want to get through Death Stranding, and then I want to get to Hogwarts Legacy and be able to have some time to play those games. But it's just so hard. So many games, I just want to play them all. But Forspoken is really, really interesting. The last thing I'll say about Forspoken that I've seen kind of floating around out there is there's a screenshot comparing, like, I guess pre-release footage that's like very nicely done, high rendered, from one of their trailers compared to post-release screenshot. And the pre-release shows Frey kind of standing very close to like some tree and some foliage. Looks beautiful, high quality, kind of what you'd expect when the game's being shown off. The bottom image, which is post-release of the actual game, shows Frey standing on a cliffside with the draw distance, as it is. It's not as pretty, we'll say, as the top one. And it's meant to say, look how this game was downgraded. And I look at the screenshot and I'm thinking, first of all, you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges to try to make your point. So I don't buy it. And I think it's a bullshit comparison. Because any game that's, open world has draw distances. When you look out in the distance, yes, concessions are made. It's not going to look as good as if something's right in front of you as the character and the player. It's going to look better close up, right? That's what gets rendered. So it just kind of really rubbed me the wrong. And I replied that, and it was like just turn around and look at the foliage actually in front of you, and then do an apples to apples comparison, and we can talk about if there's a downgrade or not. Now, again, when I played the demo, I still thought it looked beautiful. I thought it ran, not flawless, but it ran fine. And I'm sure if you were to do a screenshot, put it in fidelity mode, I'm sure it looks beautiful, gorgeous. I think that was one of the things that some people were saying, is that the environments were super detailed and almost felt kind of awkward to a certain degree. So that was going around, and it's just fuel for the console war, man. Like, it's so toxic out there. And we'll get to, the Xbox side of it here in a little bit, because there's a game that dropped on the Xbox side that is being put up against Forspoken, and you're seeing all these comparisons out there, like, you know, oh, look, Xbox is doing this or PlayStation's doing that. And it's just like, it's so stupid, because it's all for clout. It's all to just piss people off. And I guess it works, but I think it's stupid. The last thing I'll say, kind of on that topic, I guess, of the console wars, is this is one of the things that bugs me about, these influencers, particularly on the Xbox side. I have to say, because there's one gentleman in particular, and he's a prominent, I think, YouTuber. Has got a podcast, does all this stuff, does this for a living and all that. Colt Eastwood, I'll call him out, I guess. Not that I'm trying to start beef. I have beef with what he's talking about here, and it's regarding, kind of in response to the layoffs that we talked about last week with Xbox, and then 343, and kind of the state of Halo, the questionable state of Halo, I guess, like what happens to it. And so he says, if we lose our way with Halo, we lose our way with Xbox, says Phil Spencer, at a time when Xbox only had 4 main studios and like 3 living IPs. And yes, he says like in there. Now Xbox has 23 studios and almost 40 living IP. Xbox is bigger than just Halo. This is not damage control for Halo. I've been indifferent about the series after Reach. This is about an old Xbox that basically only had Halo, Gears, and Forza. I want more and new from Xbox, not more of the same. I'm glad they're loaded with new IP in the works right now. And then included in that first tweet is a screenshot, some sort of screenshot of this image of tons of characters that from IP that Xbox owns. Within the background, you see Xbox Game Studios. And so there's characters on there like from Sea of Thieves, Psychonauts 2, Redfall, Senua from Hellblade. There's even Tony Hawk from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. One of the World of Warcraft is on there. Spyro the Dragon's on there. Fallout guy's on there. The Starship from Starfield. Banjo, Kazooie, Crash, Halo. Master Chief's on there. Marcus Phoenix from Gears. The Skyrim guy. Doom guy. Wolfenstein. Forza. Minecraft. Etc. Even there's the Moon from Outer Worlds on there. And so it's just a bunch of, I guess, this IP that a bunch of IP characters from IP that Xbox owns, except the Activision deal hasn't gone through, so you really can't put those on there. But when I look at this, I'm like, okay, they own these IPs, but what of them did they actually make or create? Maybe Sea of Thieves after they acquired Rare, not Air. After they acquired Rare, maybe that's one that they helped to curate. Even with the likes of Gears and Halo, I mean, they bought those IPs. I mean, Gears used to be owned by Epic, done by Cliff Bleszinski. And then Halo, obviously Bungie. They didn't own those studios. They had to buy the IPs later. And all these other ones, like everything from Bethesda, you bought that. You didn't make any of that. And even some of the stuff coming out today, including the game we'll talk to later in the show that launched from Tango Gameworks, that was reportedly already in the works before the Bethesda deal went through. So I ask, what did they make of this? And I feel that that's important, because that's one of my biggest problems on the Xbox side is they don't make anything. They just buy it. Now you could say, well, what's it matter? Well, it matters, I think, because it shows creativity, and it shows that you're able to make something and build something rather than just purchase something. Because if you look at the other side with Nintendo and PlayStation, the way they've built their audiences and built their success is through high quality games, things that they've created, not purchased. Now there are examples where they purchase them, or they fund, second party exclusives and things like that. But, you know, The Last of Us was made by PlayStation. Uncharted made by PlayStation. Mario made by Nintendo, right? So I I just have a problem with that, especially when you're saying that, like, look at all this. Xbox didn't make it. Again, I've always I think of Xbox as the rich kid in school, the rich kid bully who just uses his money to get whatever he wants instead of doing it the old fashioned or the hard way, so to speak. They just kind of bully and buy their way around. And I can't root for that method, I guess, you know? The other thing he says in here though is Xbox is bigger than just Halo. And maybe there is some truth to that. However, you can't disregard the importance of Halo to Xbox. You can't. I mean, without Halo, there is no Xbox. None. None whatsoever. And to see what has happened to Halo since Bungie left it and Xbox took over is a crying shame. It really is. I mean, it's a hollow shell of itself. And yeah, there's some things to like about it in certain aspects, but dude, it is not even close to what it used to be. And that's sad. And I think it's a reflection on the state of Xbox. So I hate this type of stuff because I feel like it's a little misleading. It's not taking the full picture. And a lot of these folks, this gentleman included, are just shills. They're just marketing shills, marketing arms for these companies. And the reason I have a problem with that is because at some point when you become that, at some point your word and everything you say can't be trusted because I feel like it's bought and paid for. Now, maybe he is legitimately super, maybe him and some of these other folks are legitimately super passionate about, their products that they shill. And that's fair, but you got to find a balance. And you also have to be critical of the things that you like. Otherwise, you are just a marketing shill. And from what I've seen of folks like this guy is that all you do is just pimp out the products. Like everything is just so good. That's not reality. So had to get that off my chest and just throw it out there. And wow, we are 23 minutes in and I haven't even really done a proper intro. Now, one thing you may note, I'm wearing a headset today. I felt, I was thinking, and this is completely unrelated to the previous topic we were just talking about, but I also wanted to get this in here, is that I felt like I should probably look like a podcaster. So I'm going to wear, over the ear headphones and look proper for the show because that's just what you do, right? Now, of course, if I had a guest on the podcast, I would definitely need headphones. I've been using my AirPods in previous episodes for that, but I should probably just look the part. Isn't that something like a saying, like looking the part's like half the battle or something? So that's why we're doing that today. But for those of you that are hopefully still stuck around and are new to the show, remember the best way to support the show is to leave us nice reviews. You can find us on all the major social media platforms. Video episodes of the show go up on YouTube and Rumble. You can find us on the Facebook page, over on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And then you can join our community over on locals.com/Gamecite Chronicles. And over on Locals, if you do head over there, join the community for free, you can get the podcast episode, the audio version, 2 days early because it goes up live on there every Saturday before this show goes live each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, I apologize for just kind of being out of whack here, but I put those few items up top first because one, I didn't think I'd talk about them as long as I did, but two, I just kind of wanted to knock them out, get them out of the way. We'll timestamp them before we get into the main topic of today's show. So I guess we screwed up on the structure of the show this week, but it happens, and that's we're just kind of flying off the seat of our pants this week. Now, for this week's show, as you probably already know and could expect, we're going to dive into that Xbox Developer Direct. We're going to recap it and then, of course, share our thoughts on what they showed, what was announced, and kind of rate the overall show, I guess. Now, before we get into that, though, of course, we got to talk about the games that we are playing. And as always, I want to hear from you guys. So let me know what games you're playing, either down in the comments below or right in Discord. We can take you over there if you join our Discord over there. And what have I been playing? Of course, I've been playing Death Stranding. Continuing that. And like I said, I haven't had a ton of time for like a good long session to really kind of immerse myself in this game in the last few days, with the exception of tonight before I recorded the show, which I really, really needed. But now I'm probably I think I'm just about to hit the 24-hour mark. And I just completed episode 3 into episode 4 and did my second, I guess, boss fight, I think is what it was. And this game's good. It's still good. I'm still enjoying it. I want to continue and see where the story goes. One of the things that I think is really, really cool is the episode 3 kind of, it opens up a little bit for you and you kind of get to explore this big area as you're doing deliveries and uh, going about the various drop off sites and stuff like that. Is that once you kind of get folks into the network, you can start to see items and signs from other actual real life players. And again, it reminds me of like Demon Souls and Dark Souls, where you could leave players messages and helpful hints and stuff like that. But it's so cool to where like, oh, this person built a bridge, and it's super useful because you can ride your motorcycle over it to get to over this valley. Or like I spent the time to gather a bunch of resources to finish building this huge long road in this area. And once I finished it, people started using it, and I'm getting like a bunch of likes, and I'm getting little notifications, and it's boosting my stats. And so it's this really cool like social, almost network system to help other players, but in just kind of, I guess, help each other out. And it's pretty dope. I kind of like it a lot, actually. The other thing I'm trying not to do with this game is get bogged down with all these side quests and side deliveries and all this stuff. I'm kind of mostly focusing on the main missions or the main quests, main deliveries, if you will. Just because I don't want to get too caught up in that stuff to where, like I typically do with some open world games, is get so bogged down with those that by the time I'm getting towards the tail end of this game, I'm almost getting sick of it. And I just don't want that to happen. Plus, I want to make sure I get through this game before Hogwarts Legacy. So trying to focus on the main stuff, but if let's say I'm doing a delivery, main quest delivery, and I have some room for some side delivery that happens to be either on the way or in the same location, I'll do that too. So that's kind of my approach to this game. But it's fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. And it's kind of funny, some of the characters you meet. I forget that there are some cameos, like celebrity cameos. One in particular, and I don't think it's a spoiler because I'm pretty sure this was in one of the trailers, is Conan O'Brien. Like he was one of the dudes I delivered a package to. So it's just really random. I was like, oh, I totally forgot you were in this game. That's kind of funny. So that's pretty cool. And I know Hideo Kojima, I should say, is also a character in the game. So I'm curious if I can find him as I continue to play through it. But man, I'm excited. And it's right before I actually shut it down to hop on and record this podcast. I was thinking it's just starting to get good. Like the story's starting to ramp up. And I did read that after you get through the first 3 episodes, because the first, like, episodes 2 and 3, I guess, are really, really long. And then the pace really picks up after that. So I am so looking forward to that. The other thing is, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I am so torn on all the games that are coming out. So we mentioned Forspoken, right? Again, I'm still super intrigued in that game, given the divisiveness of it. Dead Space looks amazing. I think Metacritic reviews are starting to go out. and I can't wait. Like, I really want to play that because I've already played Dead Space, but one of the things I saw is that there's um, a secret ending in this new Dead Space remake, and I'm thinking like, what? Like, I want to play that. I want to know what that is. So I really want to get that game. I'm probably gonna wait for it though in a little bit. And then we'll talk about this game, the hi-fi game that just launched from Xbox. Looks really interesting. It's generating a lot of buzz out there. And then, of course, Hogwarts Legacy. It's on the horizon, 2 weeks away. I cannot wait. And then, as I mentioned, Atomic Heart's coming out, and that game just looks so dope. I mean, that game looks so damn good. I mean, it like BioShock good. I don't know. It's probably not even going to hold a candle to BioShock, but nonetheless, it looks good. So much coming out, lots of games to play, and there's even other games that I've been wanting to play and just jump into, but the eternal struggle. I don't have the time, so it is what it is. So now let's jump into it. The Xbox Developer Direct. As I mentioned, we'll recap it, share my thoughts throughout it, and then I guess rate the show. Kind of like what we normally do with every big showcase. But finally, we get a good Xbox One. So they had their first developer direct. It was, I think it was on January 25th, if I'm not mistaken. So yesterday at the time of this recording. And it was approximately 44 minutes long. They showed off 5 games from 5 developers. So Mojang, Turn 10, Tango Gameworks, ZeniMax, and Arcane Austin. And they quoted to say this is direct from the devs, hence the name. And it was pretty interesting, to say the least. So it started off with Mojang, and they talked and showed off Minecraft Legends. And in this one, they focused primarily on the PvP elements of the game. They also did mention that the campaign does have a story-driven campaign that you can play either solo or cooperatively, so that's pretty cool. But the PvP is kind of like an RTS game. I didn't really realize this. So of course you build in this, and you can have your teams of players, and what you do is it pits you against another team of players, and the idea of it is to take out the other team's base. So you're building up your own base, and you want to take out your other team's base, but there are also, I think they call them piglins, so like the pig enemies. It's like a enemy AI that will attack either teams, and that's that's it. So you got to come up with your strategy, work with your team, build your base, protect your base, but also take out the other base. So very, very RTS, like StarCraft or World of Warcraft type stuff. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Not really my thing. I've never been big on RTS games. I back in the day, I think it was on the PS1. I played a little bit of Command and Conquer, and then if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure a version of StarCraft was on the Nintendo 64, and I played the crap out of that. Loved it, but I've just never been good at these games at all. So it doesn't really appeal to me. And I've never really been into Minecraft anyways. I mean, I was late to Minecraft. I didn't really get into Minecraft till like 2013. And still, some Minecraft videos on the YouTube channel, the very, very early days of the YouTube channel. Had some fun with it. And I built some really cool stuff with their creator mode. Like I built some castles and like almost pretty much a city, some really dope tunnels and really, really cool stuff which was really, really fun and almost relaxing to build some stuff in that game. But it's never been something I've had a desire to come back to. And then I know they did the Minecraft Dungeons, which I did play a little bit of, but it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. Like I expected it to be more like Diablo than it was. So I don't know. This game just doesn't speak to me, to be honest. Though I'm sure some folks will have a lot of fun with it. And this is coming to both Xbox and PlayStation, which is typical Mojang fashion because they did that with Minecraft Dungeons. and they gave us a release date. It comes out April 18th of 2023, which I think is the same day as the Horizon DLC. So kind of interesting there. But nonetheless, we finally got a release date for this game, so that's super, super exciting and set a good precedent in the showcase. From there, they moved on to Turn 10 and their upcoming game, Forza Motorsport, which is, I guess, the reboot of Forza, if you will. And this, they said a couple things. First off, they said they're going to have over 500 cars at launch, which I don't know what the baseline is or what these Forza games typically come with, but that sounds like a lot. So that's pretty cool. And obviously, that's the most they've ever featured on a roster. They showed a lot about their graphics, and they really overused the phrase on everything that they talked about, that it is built from the ground up. I mean, literally everything they talked about started off, this was built from the ground up. It's built from the ground up, built from the ground up. So it just constantly used that frame. And look, in hindsight, that's great. It looks really, really pretty. Like, to show off some of the lighting details, the realism of it, kind of the improved audio design and some of the mixes that they were working on, and just all this stuff, their day night cycle, how every lap feels different because the roads will change just a little bit because people are driving on them, and in all this stuff. And it's like, that's cool, and I can clearly see that there's a lot of detail into all of the cars, the tracks, the environment, the feel of the racing. Like, all of that stuff is fantastic. But again, this is not a game that speaks to me. And I was actually thinking about this, like, because I remember when they showed off Gran Turismo, like Gran Turismo had their own state of play, and they did a lot of the same stuff. And I'm just wondering, because everyone knows what to expect from a racing game, that, like, is this the only way to market and sell a racing game, to talk about how detailed certain things are or how it feels? I mean, I guess so, because they both, Gran Turismo and now Forza, have done this. But I feel like there's got to be a better way to get people more excited, or kind of show off something interesting about the career mode. But I digress. Of course, they did mention it renders in 4K at 60 FPS on the Xbox Series consoles, so I assume that means the Series S as well, which is good for them. And then they left it with launches in 2023, so no release date. And we'll come back to that. Moving along is Tango Gameworks, and they revealed their brand new game called Hi-Fi Rush. And uh, so this game opened up with the very, very generic quote of, "Yup, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up here." It's like, oh my God, really? Like, we're doing this? You can't think of anything else? And maybe they're trying to make fun of it, but it comes off so generic and overused. It's such a tired trope. But that's how it opened up. And that, for me, that did not set a good tone. But I will say, they showed off this game. The big shtick with this game is that it's a rhythm-based, like, combat game. Eh, where there's, like, a grading system for your combat. And as you do your attacks, and think of your attacks kind of like in the vein of like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, that type of attacks, that as you do them on the beat to the music, then you get better scores, do more damage, and stuff like that. And one of the things they emphasized is that everything in the game, including your characters, the world, the environments, they all move to the beat of the songs. And they got a crazy good soundtracks and all that stuff. And it's a pretty cool concept, I have to say. I've never really been into rhythm games outside of like your typical, Guitar Heroes, Rock Bands, uh, those types of games. Actually, in thinking, the Nintendo DS Rhythm Heaven, that game is pretty cool too. Um, So I don't know. Looking at this game, I'm like, I don't know. This isn't really jiving with me. And I mean, it's interesting. It's cool. It has a beautiful art style. It's very cartoonish, and so props there because it is a cool looking game. But I just don't know if it really speaks to me. But as the trailer's going on, you kind of get a little bit of the main character. His name is Chai. The character seems a bit unsufferable. I mean, we complained about the Forspoken dialogue being very Marvel-esque, tropey, overused, generic. The same is happening here with this character, Chai. I mean, again, that opening. Yup, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. No, I'm not. I don't care. Give me a reason to care. Oh, and it's just like he's saying some stupid things. I'm like, I just, it feels a bit insufferable, if I'm being honest, at least from what I saw. Maybe it's not as bad when you're playing the game, but boy, that it just kind of set me off on the wrong foot. However, I will say that I am curious on how the combat feels because when they were showing that off and they kind of showed, I think like a beginning tutorial section where you're kind of learning how to keep up with the rhythm and hit the beats with your attacks. Because the more that you do that, they were saying, higher scores, better, all that stuff. And I get the sense that like if you are keeping the rhythm, kind of getting into this flow state with the music as you're traversing, battling enemies, like I could see this being really satisfying combat. And so I am intrigued in that sense to like if that's as satisfying as I think it could be, then that could be something to kind of get you through this game and really give you kind of a cool experience. And they showed off some boss battles. So I think the whole premise of the game, they described it as like this rhythm action game, but you kind of play through these levels, reach the boss, and you're basically just trying to take down. I think it's this corporation or something like that, full of different bosses. But the boss battles have like set pieces. There's mini games involved, and so they're these kind of big foray um, crescendos, if you will, to that final level, which is pretty cool. And the surprise thing about this is that this game launched tonight, or that night, I should say, January 25th, uh, on Xbox. So Xbox Game Pass, of course, it went up there. And that was crazy. I don't think anyone's expected to see that. Not only did we not expect to hear from Tango Gameworks, but I don't think this game leaked. It just shadow dropped. And a really, really cool surprise, I have to say. Now, again, as I was watching this, it doesn't look like my style of game. And I think my biggest problem with it is that this is not what I want from Tango Gameworks. Like, this is the guys that did The Evil Within 1 and 2, so survival horror games. Then they did Ghostwire Tokyo, kind of this horror action game. And now we're getting this, which is completely different. And that's kind of how they marketed it. Now you can tell this is a smaller title. I think it's only like 25, $30 or something if you were to buy it. So hopefully they're working on something much bigger, like their next big AAA project. But for me, I'm just like, I hope this is not all that you guys are working on because I want more. Now, the other thing I was thinking about with this game, because again, as I mentioned, it doesn't really look like something I'd be into, but I said the same thing with Ghostwire Tokyo. And once I finally jumped into that game, it floored me. Like it just took me away. It captured my heart, and I fell in love with that game. So maybe the same thing can happen here. I was looking at howlongtobeat.com, and it did say that this game, I think people were beating it between 8 and 9 hours, which is perfect. So maybe it's a game I could squeeze into it. And this game seems to be getting a lot of positive sentiment, a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of positive, reviews from people that are playing it. And a lot of people seem to be enjoying it. As I mentioned, a lot of buzz around this game. But one of the things I've been thinking about is that would there be so much positivity and buzz around this game if it wasn't on Game Pass and people could play it for free? Because I've always wondered that effect. Maybe a different Game Pass effect, if you will. Because if folks had to pay, 25, $30, would they be as excited for that game that Shadow dropped to pay for it and then play it? I don't know. And part of me thinks no, that they wouldn't. That part of the reason that games like this find success on Game Pass is because people can jump into it without paying for free, right? And when you don't pay for something, when you don't have that financial incentive for it, then you can be more positive about it. It's like, oh, well, maybe I didn't like it, but I didn't pay for it, so it's not a big deal. So it's an inherently much more positive experience because you didn't pay for it. So I'm wondering if that's kind of a factor that's feeding into this. And I mean, one of the other things I see is folks constantly saying like the only reason they're jumping in this game is because it is on Game Pass. And so like I'm curious. So my question would be like, so of those that played it on Game Pass, do you actually like the game? Would you have liked it had you paid, 25, $30, whatever the price is for it? Or are you saying that of those that are saying that, they're trying it because it's on Game Pass, does that mean like you wouldn't buy this game if it wasn't on Game Pass? And so I point that out because I think it's something to consider when we talk about these titles. Is like this almost bias that the Game Pass can create because folks aren't inherently paying for something. I don't know. I just think it's really, really interesting and kind of something to consider, I guess. Now, after Tango Gameworks, they moved over to ZeniMax Online to talk about the next update for Elder Scrolls Online. And so the next update is called Necrom. And they showed off that it has their new playable class, which I guess is only the third since launch, which is pretty crazy. It's an Arcanist, is what they said. And basically, this segment was them just kind of selling this game because they talked about all the different things you can do, places you can explore from other games like Morrowind, Skyrim, some of the Skyrim DLCs, and you can visit these areas, do quests in these areas. And then one of the things that I actually appreciated that they called out is that they said you can play this game either solo or with friends. And they talked about all the different ways that you can play this game, from, just doing the main quests to exploring to doing raids to becoming like a blacksmith or a craftsman to just make items for other players. And, with it being an MMO, it kind of gives you these tons of different possibilities and how you can play this game. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then they kind of ended with that for a limited time, or a limited period, I guess I should say, is that all 20 of their DLCs for this game, all the past DLCs, are available for free. So if you hop into this game, you can get all of that content for free, which is wild. Like, there's so much content for this game. It's insane. And they mentioned this new update is coming out on, what is it, June 5th, 2023, which is, I think that's right around Diablo 4 time too, right? So interesting. But nonetheless, I think I talked about this before, but Elder Scrolls Online fascinates me. Like, if you like Skyrim, like not Skyrim, but any of the Elder Scrolls game, like, I have to imagine you would like this game. And I played a little bit of it, and it was very high quality. It was very, very good. It just I reached a point to where like I didn't know what to do, and I got distracted with something else. And quite frankly, I just don't think I can give the necessary time needed for this style of game. But maybe I'd go back to it at some point. Yeah, right. Because I got so much time, right? But I'm floored by this game because not only is it super high quality, it seemed to have a good following, consistent following. Every year they're doing updates, more additional content, and it's just chugging along kind of very quietly. and I would say successfully. I don't know the actual numbers, but there's something to be said here, and I'm quite impressed nonetheless. And then, of course, the game I was looking forward to the most, and what they ended the show with, Arcane Austin and Redfall. Now, again, they describe this as a story-driven shooter that you can play either single player or co-op, which is a hell yeah for me because I plan on playing this single player. I'm a single player guy. And then they showed off kind of some of the screens where you can choose one of your 4 heroes. They talked about how the open world is packed with tons of environmental storytelling, which I love. Love to hear that. And I love the aesthetic of this game and the color palettes that they're using. Those kind of reds into the oranges. It's very dark, a little atmospheric. I just love it. And the vampires, I think, are designed really, really cool. Like I love the vampire designs. And they showed off a lot of couple different like missions, and so we got to see some combat. I thought it looked fun. I thought the shooting looked pretty solid in my opinion. It almost looks like maybe they got some help from id in terms of some of that first person shooter gameplay. It's not like a Doom style shooter, of course, but it does look a little more fluid. Maybe get a little help here to kind of smooth it out. But I thought this game looked fucking awesome. So they also showed off this ability where the player kind of cloaks himself, like whatever character he's playing at. He's like sneaking past vampires, and the mission that they showed was so cool, and they emphasize that you can approach these missions that you go on like you can in other Arcane games, however you want. Super stealthy, guns blazing, everything in between. I love that. I love that. They also showed off what they called otherworldly places, like that are basically vampire nests where you destroy off waves of vampires and then eventually kind of destroy this heart looking thing to kind of take down the nests and the vampires protecting it. So those are kind of side activities you can do. There also seems to be like some like kind of looter based elements in here and in item rarity, if I saw that accurately. And then because they were showing all kinds of different styles of missions that you'd be doing and kind of content, the way you can kind of clear maps and kind of fight the boss of this section of the map and clear up parts of town. It definitely has lots of kind of those open world tropes and activities you'd expect in like an open world game in terms of collectibles and side quests and activities and stuff like that. But in this context, from what I'm seeing, I'm all for it. That sounds good to me. Like, I don't know. I just, everything about this game just, to me, looked awesome. I loved seeing it. I mean, there were moments as I'm watching this where I'm literally like, fuck yeah, this looks so good. I'm like yelling and talking, just getting so hyped up because I'm just so pumped for this game. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but I love uh, arcane games. I guess you know, over the last year, I feel like I've just really kind of embraced it. Like I'm a big arcane fan. I love your shit. You guys make great games, and I cannot wait for this game. Now, a couple other things that they mentioned is there's tons of different weapons to pick up. There's different customization options for those weapons. There's skill trees to level up your abilities, and then I think in the main quest, you're fighting these vampire gods and taking them out, which is pretty dope. And then finally, they ended with their release date of May 2nd, 2023. Now, it was rumored that we're going to have our May release date, and it comes out before not Breath of the Wild, but the new Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom. So I think that's good to get ahead of that, but I still think you should have done like mid to late April if you could, just because I feel like stay away from Zelda, because as soon as that game comes out, it's hogging all the spotlight. I'm telling you right now. Either way, though, I can't wait. I cannot wait. And the interesting thing about this game is, looking online, there's a lot of people that are negative towards this game after seeing it in this showcase. Like they were talking about it was a graphical downgrade and it just looked boring. And some people are describing it as like Arcane's take on Borderlands, or I also saw people saying it's Far Cry Vampires. And to that, like, I like Far Cry. Far Cry Vampires sounds great to me. Or like Borderlands. Yeah, I love the first two Borderlands. Those games are fantastic. So I have no problems like that. That sounds great to me. I don't know what you're talking about. But then the downgrades, like, I don't know. I didn't really see it, but I, you know, I thought it ran fine. It did have a couple, I guess, performance hiccups. A couple frames dropped, maybe a little stuttery here and there. It wasn't like overly bad, but I don't know. It wasn't anything to where I'm like, oh, this looks like shit. This game looks terrible. I don't know. I don't see that by any means. But I was kind of surprised by a lot of the negativity around this game. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, am I the only one who's like hyped for this game now? Like, I'm like, I am more excited for this than Starfield by far. I am way more excited for this game. Like, this game just it's like right up my alley. First person shooter. It's got some open world elements. You can do side quests. You're taking down vampires. I love the arcane aesthetic, the art style. I'm in, dude. I'm all in. 100%. And I'm kind of torn because I want to buy this game. I want to own it physically, but they're giving it away on Game Pass, and so it's like, why would I pay full price for it if I am going to be subscribed to Game Pass? So it's this conundrum that I feel that I'm in because I know what Xbox wants me to do, which is play it on Game Pass. So I will eventually buy this game though. If I don't buy it at launch, which I probably won't, I'll probably play it on Game Pass. So yes, I guess I am part of the problem. But that's what Microsoft wants me to do. I mean, kind of a no-brainer not to. But like I did with Outriders, is that I will pick this game up eventually and own it because I have a feeling I'm going to like this game a lot. I'm so stoked for it. I think it looks fantastic. One of the other things I saw that kind of has me concerned when talking about Game Pass is, and it was kind of in response to this showcase as a whole, but Redfall being one of them, is a lot of comments like these. And so I'm going to read this particular one. This is from Twitter. So this person said, "Thank God for Game Pass. All these Xbox games that look like $60 to $90 gambles are now risk-free to try. Obviously not what they intended, but it saves me money and I can try them all still." And I see a lot of tweets and sentiment very similar to this, to where people are like, well, at least I can play it on Game Pass or try it out for free. And it's this troubling sentiment to where you see folks that just don't want to buy games. Now, I know I just talked about I'm probably not going to buy Redfall at launch so I'm part of the problem because that's what Xbox wants me to do. They want me to go, play it on Game Pass. And since I'm already subscribed, I might as well, right? So I recognize that. I understand it. But I'm not completely opposed to buying my games. And I would actually, in a way, prefer that because it allows me to choose what games I want to play. But this sentiment just has me a little worried because, and I've talked a little bit about, Game Pass kind of training folks not to buy games and what it could mean for, developers, the money in, money out type thing. Like, and I hate to kind of steal this from Colin Moriarty over at Sacred Symbols, really the only gaming podcast I listen to, but he put it quite elegantly. And he said that he's worried about the economics of the games industry. And in kind of thinking about it through that lens, I was like, yes, I share that. I share that sentiment, and that I'm concerned for the economics of the industry, because if folks aren't buying games, then how are people going to make money? Does this lead us to, this even more down the path of live service, tons of micro injections? Does it lead us down the mobile gaming path where we flood the market and it's the race to the bottom? Everything is so heavily monetized, it just deludes the games. I don't want to go down that path. And with Game Pass, if you are if you're in the Xbox ecosystem, your odds are you're on Game Pass. I mean, no one talks about Xbox without talking about Game Pass. I mean, that's the draw. That's the draw is Game Pass. So if you're so invested in that, like in a way, you're kind of letting Xbox and Microsoft dictate what you play because it's a curated service. And with any service, just like Netflix, Disney, you're being fed games or content on the service. And it's crazy how folks just mindlessly consume this and say how good it is because there's nothing else. You're being force fed this. So it has to be good, right? Now, that's not to say there aren't good games. There are. But hopefully you get my point. I don't like that. I don't want to reach a point to where I'm being force fed content. And a lot of the comparisons are towards Disney Plus, Netflix, and the like. And I think about that and I'm like, okay, like with Netflix, like for every good show on Netflix, like a Stranger Things, Ozark, Castlevania, Cobra Kai, those Cobra Kai's awesome, by the way. I freaking love that show. But for all of those shows, for every good one, there's 10 to 15 bad ones, just absolute garbage. And they're just constantly shitting out content. And I mean that literally because there's so much crap on there. It is almost overwhelming. And things just get lost. But that's what we have. That's what we have on the service. So we have, I guess you can not consume it, but almost no choice but to consume it. This is what you're given, so you're going to eat it, so to speak. And I don't want that in video games. I like being able to pick out the games that I want to play, gladly pay for them, and play the things that I find interesting and not feel compelled to play a game just because I'm paying for a subscription service. And then never mind the economics of it. And again, one of the things I've also been thinking about with Xbox, especially with the Activision Blizzard deal and some of the stuff that's been coming out, is that Xbox is because Xbox is backed by Microsoft with just disgustingly deep pockets, like a big monolithic mega corporation, that they can afford to just pour so much money into this and never earn a dime back when we talk about Game Pass in this service. And to do so in such a degree that it changes the economics of the games industry and undercuts, because you're basically paying very little to next to nothing for video games, and Microsoft can afford to eat that cost in an attempt to price out your competition. And is that what we want? In just is that genuinely what we want? I don't want that at all. I hate that idea. In the same way that like Amazon undercuts mom and pop shops and prices them out of business and continues to grow. Like, yeah, everyone's got Amazon and you can get just about anything and everything you'd ever want on there, but you don't have a choice because there's no other choice anymore. You have to go to Amazon. Is that what we want for video games? I don't know, man. That to me that doesn't sound like anything we'd ever want, but that's like what my fear is. And that's why I've said in the past, like, I feel like Microsoft and Xbox, they are the bad guys in this situation because I feel like that's what they're trying to do. It's almost these nefarious intentions. And because everyone is, a lot of folks are getting a good deal and it's consumer friendly, they don't care. They disregard it. And it's like, well, be careful what you wish for, man. Like, we could have, like, console gaming could turn into mobile gaming. And that sounds terrible. So, just something I kind of been thinking about in this. It's kind of reminded me of it, but nonetheless, I'm still worried about the economics, and I guess times they are a changing. But that's how they ended the show with Arcane Austin and Redfall. Again, Redfall looks so So good. I cannot wait. But overall, I gotta say, if you'd asked me yesterday right after the show, I was kind of lukewarm on it. In that, typically with these kind of developer style showcases, they're usually too long, drawn out, and it's like I don't really care about how it's made to a certain degree. Like, just show me the game, show me some gameplay, actual gameplay, someone playing the game, and move on. Don't waste my time. And so I still feel that way to a certain degree. However, with this particular showcase, I thought it was very well done in the sense that it was pretty to the point, even though it was 44 minutes long, but it's pretty to the point, very concise, and I mean, it was very well shot. Like, it was very, very well shot and put together. Like, whatever production team were they hired to do that, kudos to them, man. Like, that very, very high quality and very well put together. So I think it's a good format that Xbox can continue to do. And it's not that I dislike constantly hearing from developers. I do think there is something kind of cool about it in the sense that these developers, I mean, they've been working on these games for the last, I don't know what, 3 to 5 years, however many years of their lives, can't talk about it. And then they get the opportunity now on camera to talk about their games and their project that they've been working on and put in, blood, sweat, and tears for. So they're going to be amped. And you can kind of see the passion kind of seeping through them as they talk about the games and the work that they're doing. And that's cool. That's really, really cool to see. And I can appreciate that. But I feel like if they were to do more than, say 4 to 5 games in this format, I don't know if it would work because then I feel like it would be too long. And then it kind of, you are wasting my time. Because one of the things I like the Nintendo Direct style, and that it's just game after game after game. And yeah, some of there's lots of highs and lows throughout the directs, but it's 20 minutes to the point, and I've got 15 games that I can be either happy or excited about. Happy, excited, or sad about. So something I think for them to consider, but if they keep it very precise, to the point, and also set expectations, which is something that I think they did a very good job at. Even though, of course, you're always going to get the people like, oh, where's Starfield? Where's Starfield? I didn't see Starfield in there. Bruh, come on. But they did try to set expectations. So if they continue to do that, I think this can be a format that I wouldn't mind seeing them do, maybe like once a quarter or something like that. The other thing I'll say, let's get back to Forza. So every game but Forza had a release date. So Minecraft Legends, April 18th. Hi-Fi Rush, today. It's out now. Elder Scrolls Online, the Necrom update, June 5th. In Redfall, May 2nd. Forza, 2023. Still no release date. And this is mind-boggling to me. What the hell's going on? This was your opportunity to give us release dates. Now remember, Forza was also in the summer showcase stating that it's going to be out by June 2023. So in the next 12 months from when that showcase happened. And they don't have a release date for it yet. I get the sense this game ain't coming out till, I don't know, after that, I guess. Here's my theory. I think Redfall's been delayed. I think Redfall will come out in the fall of this year, like September, and then Forza Motorsport will come out in July, like summertime. That's kind of where my mind's at. And I think that's what's happened. That they're not going to be able to fulfill those promises that they made in the showcase last year for whatever reason. And those games got pushed out. And then like Hellblade 2 with Senua's Sacrifice, or whatever Hellblade 2 is called. That game will come out like November, something like that. And so they'll still have plenty more games to launch towards the second half of the year. But I get the sense that those two games have moved out of that window for whatever reason, one or the other. And again, you got to ask, like, what the hell is going on over there? To me, that was just like an immediate red flag. Like, what's going on? However, we did finally get some release dates, so there's some finally, a few things to be excited for on the Xbox side. And this was much needed. Definitely much needed, especially after the no-show at the Game Awards last month and all the like. But there it is. That's the showcase. So I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about the showcase? What was your favorite game from the showcase? Am I the only one who's excited for Redfall? Like, genuinely. Like, is anyone else? Hello? Hello? Is anybody else excited for Redfall? Hello? Am I alone here? I don't think so. But, and then the last question I have for you. If you've played Hi-Fi Rush, what do you think of it? I think I'm going to jump into it at some point. Again, being a shorter game, maybe I could squeeze it in between Death Stranding. Don't know, because I'm very curious about it, given this kind of the hype and the reception it's gotten. So we shall see. But that's all I got for this week's episode. Went a little bit longer than I thought, and kind of had a mixed up agenda at the top, but a couple things I just felt compelled to talk about. But as it is, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there, and I don't say this enough, but I really do appreciate your love, kindness, and support. Uh, Shows and the downloads for the shows are going great, and I really do appreciate it. Again, the one thing I can ask is share it with your friends, help me get the word out there on the show, and of course, if you have any recommendations, topics, anything like that, I'm always open for that. Let me know. Feedback is always appreciated, and I'm going to get out of here, finish my little nightcap, and probably go hit the hay because it's getting, what is it, almost 1 o'clock in the morning here. So it's getting a little bit late. And I unfortunately do have to work tomorrow. So as it is. But the last thing I'll mention here is remember you can get the show 2 days early over on Locals. So Gamecite, it's thelocals.com/Gamesite Chronicles. You can check us out. Join the community for free over there and then get the audio version of the show 2 days early. Of course, video versions go up on YouTube and Rumble, so you can watch the show there. Can't wait to talk to you guys next week. And again, I'm still trying to get another guest on the show. Again, I've got 2 people in mind I can reach out to, but I've already reached out to 2 other folks that I unfortunately haven't heard back from, but is what it is. But one of them I've been really, really wanting to get her on the show. Like I really want to talk to her because I think the conversation would be super, super interesting. But haven't heard back. So hopefully maybe something will turn around, but I do still want to get another guest on the show for another good talk, session, good topic and all that stuff. So anyways, I'm rambling at this point. I'm going to get out of here, hit the hay. Hope you guys are doing great. I will talk to you next week. So until next time, I'm Bonfire and I will see you online.